Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I am a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on September 25th, 2022 at approximately 6:39 a.m. PST. Well, I figured I'd look at it today and really look into the importance of number one being of really having focus on what you personally desire to acquire, accomplish, attain, and the importance of combined with the importance of a positive and productive personal outlook, and personal attitude towards it. Now, the reality of it, from my standpoint, is you can have all the dreams in the world, okay, and it doesn't matter who you are, this still applies, okay. So you really have to take a look at things and say, okay, what am I up to? What am I striving to accomplish? Now, the first rule of thumb in that case is you got to figure out what you personally desire, not what everybody else thinks is going on. Greetings, Nightmare. Glad you could make it. Figured I'd try and get things set up and moving in the right direction. Hope your day has gone well. I got looking at things and I've had to come to a couple of very definitive realizations. Now, first and foremost, no matter who you are, okay, you're still only one person in approximately 7.9 billion people. Okay, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter how many different businesses you own, how many books you've written, doesn't matter anything. You're still only one person. And one of the biggest things that I found, one of the real big things I did come across was that the moment you start seeing yourself as being better than anybody, you run into a problem. It's just that simple. In case you're wondering what I'm doing, I'm seeing if I got things straightened around here to actually get a heads up on whether or not. Well, that's a cute thought. On whether or not my computer is going to let me know when things are actually running. And thus far, the answer to that has been no. But the sad reality of it is too many people take a look at the stuff that they personally have, and go, okay, because I've got all this extra stuff, I'm better than the next person. But the reality is that is far, far, far from the truth. Okay, you're still only one individual. Trying to figure out why. Okay, and it does not look like it's going to do. Yeah, that's cute. Notification on, and it still didn't tell me. I'll tell you, technology and I do not get along very well. So, what do we do here? That says notification on. If I click on that, and let's see what it says. Just, oddly enough, there we are. Have to do it the hard way, but what the heck? At least we got it this time. Okay, don't want back into feedback. Okay, Chris, how you doing? Absolutely, Chris. You've always got stuff on the go. What I came to the understanding of was there's certain things that are absolutely imperative you realize. Number one, you're still only one person. No matter how good you may think you are, you're still only going to be able to do 1 man-hour of work. You're still going to end up dying, and nobody's taking their material stuff with them. Okay, they tried that centuries back in Egypt. The pharaohs figured they were so good, they were so special, and they were so smiled upon, they could bury their stuff with them and have it show up on the other side. Once they passed away. Well, that ain't quite the way it worked out for them. Okay, so what ended up happening is they died, their stuff was still in the tomb. Same thing applies to you. Now, where it comes to Yldrbacian Chronicles, which are the big thing that I'm working on, I had to come to realize I haven't done the calculation yet, but you may have done the same thing. I have spent thousands of dollars on printing on professionals that said they could help get me more visibility, drive my sales through the roof. Well, I'll tell you, 0 times 0 is still 0. Okay. Or zero, like literally everybody that has told me that I've talked to, especially everybody of a so-called professional nature that has turned around. Greetings, Dogface. Glad you can make it. Literally everybody I've talked to that has claimed to have a professional ability to increase my visibility, increase my sales, has accomplished absolutely nothing to speak of. Okay, they've got some phenomenal sales teams out there. And this is one of the reasons why I will tell you wholeheartedly that I am not good where it comes to the marketing side. I'm great. I'm great. Well, I am. I've shown a lot of people how to do things, but where I've run into a problem is trying to get myself motivated properly. Okay. Now, what I've come to realize is that one of the biggest reasons I run into that problem is I told myself for years that I was not good. Okay. I'm not good at marketing. I'm not good at remembering names. And, it's like telling your child or somebody you work with, or that you have working for you, rather. Anytime you spend your energy telling somebody what they are not capable of, okay, what little focus they have, what little ability they have to start with, you're going to teach them they don't have it. Okay, and this is why I have said so often, you focus on the positive, you maximize the positive, you minimize the negative. This will help. Now, what I keep neglecting to do for myself, and this is my fault, is focusing on that with me. I have repeatedly told myself, I look at the numbers, I look at what's going on, and I go, I'm just not in those people's caliber. And you may be telling yourself the same thing, which is why, as you can see, I've left that sign up here, that one right there that says, I am worth it. Okay, and I know the other day I was talking, and somebody mentioned that they missed this sign. Okay, it hasn't gone very far. This one says the same thing. Next year, I have committed to myself to actually add a little bit more to it. Not make it busier, just make it a little darker. A little clearer, I think is a better word. Okay. I've spent the majority of my life improvising without a whole lot of functional focus. And many of you likely have done the same thing. Now, do I sit and do I, shall we say, procrastinate a lot? The answer is yes. Okay. Now, one of the biggest problems that you run into if you're procrastinating too much is that you won't get a whole lot accomplished. Okay, so what I've taken to doing is I take a look at some of these things. I just have to remember that if I'm going to do this, okay, now this is one of those little arboreans. Okay, and as you can see, he's not complete yet by any functional stretch. But I should have grabbed a paintbrush. And that being said, yeah, I did come to the conclusion that moving around is not an entirely bad thing. Okay, one of the biggest things I do find, I've got a lot of these paintbrushes that are just absolutely toasted because I still haven't, that worked. Still working on how to get the brushes to clear up. did come across the formula just yesterday. I was talking to a painter. They gave me an idea that may just work. So, I remember talking to a professional videographer, and he flat out told me that I should sit still and keep my hands steady and what have you, because it's somewhat distracting. It doesn't look professional. Well, from my way of looking at it, it's pretty simple. Okay, try that again. It may not look professional, okay, but at least I don't have to try and figure out whether or not it's real, because this literally is me. Okay, when I'm working on projects, I seldom work on only one thing at a time. Now, this particular figure took me a little while to piece together to figure out what I was going to do with it. But as you can see, it doesn't really take a lot to get things organized, but you do have to be aware of what you're aiming for. Now, a lot of these figures I work on at the same time simply because of the fact that in order to get things completed, you always have to do one thing at a time, ultimately. Okay, and I shouldn't say always, because when it comes to thinking, well, let's face it, that is not done one step at a time. The other thing you got to remember, we take a look at the computer that we're working on right now. I don't know if you realized it, but what I came to understand was real simple. The computer that we work on today was literally patterned after the human brain. Okay, and yet people put so much weight on computers and say this is the way everything works. People seem to be forgetting how to use their brains. So I'm looking at this going, okay, how do I go about modifying that in my own world? Okay, my brain does not work as the majority of people seems to, but that's okay. That doesn't mean my brain works better. And many of you out there have very similar complications, especially people. There's a new little word that's been thrown out there, or at least it's only come out in the last 5 years to my awareness, something called neurodivergent, which really sounds like an insult, or it sounds like you're really broken, something like that. But here's the oddball reality of it. Every single person on the planet, take a look at what that word says. Neurodivergent. And neuro boils down to your brain. Divergent. Varied. It does not stay on the path of everybody else's, or even of the majority of people's. What am I seeing a shadow on? I don't know. Well, that was cutely distracting. But, so many people take a look at it and they go, oh, that person's neurodivergent, or I'm neurodivergent. Okay, well, I will be straightforward with you on this one, just like everything else. I actually went to a professional trained psychiatrist, okay, for years. And then I turned around and went to a second one and a third one. And the third one, I had them test me for everything wrong, for anything wrong. Okay, and what they came back with was really kind of comical. They turned around and told me, no, your brain definitely doesn't work the way other people's do. Other people's brains work. But your brain there is absolutely nothing mentally wrong with you. No ADD, no ADHD, none of it. And yet, I still do not think like other people. This is just a flat out reality. But I came to the realization, do I desire to think like everybody else? Clearly not, because, no matter how I look at it, I still have never managed to function that way. Now, what I'm doing here, okay, where I'm adding the green right now on the tips, is because I've got a living tree here. Okay, what you'll call a living tree. Okay, this is a living arboretum. Well, Technically, this one's plastic. But what I'm doing is looking at it going, okay, we've got live shoots here. So let's work with them. So we start off with the black because this is an ironwood arboreal. Okay. Now, the nice thing about ironwood is ironwood sinks. So here we have an arboreal that you put him in the middle of the water and he will go to the bottom. And by the way, they don't breathe underwater well. So they will drown. There's no question there if you put them in water. But all I'm doing here is taking the shoots and painting the ends of them green. The other sections that you'll see, as you can tell, it's black for the most part. And then I've got the red moss and the tips are all green. Okay. But the internal parts, the midpoints, are all being done in a light brown. Okay, so when I'm talking about staying focused, okay, you've got to pick where you're aiming. Now, for me, it really boils down to getting an idea in my head as to what I really desire to accomplish. The same applies to you. Take a look at where your life is. Are you content with the fact that your life is not doing exactly what you desired it to? Okay, are you happy with that point? Now, here's the thing. I've got this arboreal here. Okay, and I'm not happy with the fact that he's not painted. So here's how scary and how painful change is. And this just brings it right down to the final point. Okay, when we talk about change being difficult, or change being painful, or change being frightening, understand something very important. I don't like the color of these pieces here because they're not painted yet. I desire them to change. So what do? I simply dip my brush into green and then I go straight up the side of it. And you'll notice I am not writhing in pain. Okay. This didn't take a whole lot of effort. But lo and behold, here I am. Okay. I've got these branches that I'm not happy with the color. Yeah, I know it's dropped down below sight, but that's because it had to. Okay. And why would somebody? Oh, okay. Now, I'm looking at this going, people would say because I'm changing it or I'm aiming to change it, it's difficult. Well, did that look difficult? And did that look like it was really painful or really scary? Paint job's pretty pathetic, but the reality of it is it did not take a whole lot to really make it happen. And you've got the same ability. You can take whatever you desire, get focused on it, go, this is what I desire to happen. Now, this is just a very small example. Okay. Just a very small example. But, I was looking at things and going, there's something very wrong here. When I'm taking a look at the world, going and turning to people that claim to be professionals, and yet I'm not seeing any productivity. Okay, on their part. I'm seeing no change on their part. As a matter of fact, I'm seeing things that are costing me a lot of money, costing you a lot of money in many cases. Okay, if you're aiming for a professional to do something, do not worry about what their ad says. Okay, ads are meant to sound extremely, extremely advantageous to you. They're supposed to make you go, gee, I'm really good at this and I can help you do that. This product will do whatever for you. Okay. Advertising is an idea of telling people how badly you need something and make you really desire to have it. Now, once they've done that, once you get in that heart, once they tell you often enough, you require this, and go out and buy it. Take your hard-earned money and go out and buy it. If somebody can make you accept that you require this more than anything, okay, then what you're going to end up doing in all likelihood is stepping out and going and buying it. Now, I will tell you this, okay, when I look at what I'm doing, okay, I look at these. Yeah, that's it. Lean over and follow my head. That's a good idea. Okay, when I look at these books, now it still is, a dream of mine from literally decades back. Will I tell you I like the way the story read? Absolutely. If I go right to the back of this book here, if I go all the way into the back of it, okay, I can tell there's a part here called Yldrbac, the story. Now, I don't think you can read that. Okay, primarily because I'm not holding it steady. Okay, but since I don't think you can read it, but this here says Yldrbac, the story. This story, okay, it's several pages long, okay, is essentially the story that I originally wrote. The only difference was, where it says way down here on the second page, several galactic millennia, for the next several galactic millennia. When I originally wrote the story, I had a great big long, what was it? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 digit number that was written in there. So instead of putting a great big long number, I changed it to that. Okay. But this whole story tells everything, gives you the entire storyline from book 1 all the way through book 8. Okay, and then in book 9, the Great Collapse itself, which if you look at the back end of this story, okay, which is like 8 pages, I think it's 8 pages in. Okay, what the last paragraph says, at last, the age of man was upon the world. During this age, man created great machines of war and enormous jungles of stone. For many thousands of years, man had dominion over the world. Then a new thought came upon the long-forgotten races of elves, dwarves, and Yldrbac, and they prepared for yet another battle. Okay, that is where book 8 actually comes to a close. Now, book 9 in this whole saga is the Great Collapse. This book here is book 10 in the saga. Okay, there are 9 others prior to this one that I'm in the process of writing. Okay, and what this does, this picks up after the Great Collapse ended. Now, this is a storyline I wrote when I was 15. Does this make it an incredible story? Absolutely not. But I'll leave that for you to decide. Okay, I will tell you, and I was talking to somebody the other day. Apparently, there are a number of gamers that are actually out there writing stories. The biggest difference between mine and anybody else's is real simple. Mine is written by me. Okay, I came up with this idea in my head that I desired to put this story to print. I had the pleasure way back. Well, when I was 15, I got the story written, and then in 2016 or 2017, I managed to talk to my original English teacher. I think she's passed away at this point, but I managed to talk to her and get her go ahead to give her credit in the book. Okay, in the front end of the book, to say this is where it came from. Okay, now some people will look at that and go, why? Well, the reason being, there are a lot of teachers out there that are doing a fabulous job in spite of the way the system is set. There's a lot of parents out there, a lot of adults that are really inspiring other people. And not too many of them actually get to hear people say, well done. Okay, and get to hear that person come back and thank them for it. Lord knows I should have done a lot better with my own parents. But since I cannot do anything about that, okay, all I can do at this stage is turn around and go from here on forth. I'm going to focus on what I can do or what I desire to get across. Okay, now I came to the conclusion, and I debated this for a while, as to whether to continue doing this at all. Okay, like continue doing the YouTube. And the reason for that, I made the mistake of looking at the videos. Okay, of looking at the numbers that were on site. Now, right now, like listening to me when I'm live, and in all fairness, the fact anybody listens to me while I'm live is amazing. But I have come to the understanding that when I go online, I go, this is where I'm going to be. I don't have to. As a matter of fact, it's best if I don't look at the numbers and go, this is how I tell whether I'm doing well. Well, how I tell whether I'm doing well is this. Okay, I get an idea in my head of something I desire to accomplish. Whoop, that didn't work well. I get an idea in my head of something I desire to accomplish. Get your mind set on it. Decide whether or not you're accomplishing what you're aiming for. Okay, which is why I take these things, and why when I take a figure, and again, this is another one of the figures I'm working with. Okay, this one I actually just brought into I don't have a name for him offhand. Okay, but I came to the conclusion that if I turn around and start working on the figures at the same time, at the same time I'm talking about them, I can actually make things work a little bit more readily, a little bit more clearly. Now, this does not make me better than anybody. Okay, I may well be a little stranger than many, but I blame that on the fact that that's the way my life went. Okay, I'm certainly not going to sit here and complain to a bunch of you and say, "Oh, my life is miserable because." Okay, if my life is miserable, the only person that I can realistically blame for that is, frankly, myself. Now, I'm not the one that set things in motion for the way this world is running right now. But it's very much up to me whether or not I buy into the idea that things are sour or that the world, I can look at the world and go, it's completely hooped. And there's an old saying that goes, thinking about doing something is as bad as doing it. Well, take that into a realistic perspective here. Okay, let's just assume for half a moment that's even remotely true. How many books, how many stories have you listened to that tell of the end of the world? How many people standing in front of pulpits and in front of crowds of literally thousands of other people going, the world's going to end. They think about the world ending. They think about the world going into a massive economic and military meltdown. Okay, let's talk about civil war. Let's not. The only war you have to actually focus on is the one that goes on in here. This is where the war is. The rest of that stuff out there is not the war. It's the result of this one. Are you content with the way your life is? Are you happy with the way you've been handling your life, how you've been making your decisions? If the answer is yes, then your world will run reasonably smoothly. If the answer is no, who are you going to blame? Somebody else? I know in the movie Ghostbusters, the world goes to heck. Who are you going to call? Ghostbusters. Well, guess what? When your mind starts to go all over the place, who do you call? Professional psychiatrists are an absolutely essential asset to most people. Okay. Was funny, I spent years working with them. Did they actually change the way my mind is thinking? Not in the slightest. Okay, the only thing they really did was said, okay, your mind works really different, okay, than what we've seen before. But it's working perfectly fine for what it is. Now, with this in mind, don't get me wrong. Your mind may not work like anybody you know. Okay, well, that stands to reason. Your mind is yours. Now, there are some similarities. But the neat part about it is those similarities apply to every single entity, every single individual. Good afternoon, Carl. Glad you can make it. Those differences apply to literally every single individual you know. Okay, every one of the ones in existence. That is just the reality of it. And when you come to realize that you can focus on the negative or you can focus on the positive. Okay, when you come to realize it really is up to you which one you're going to do, what you'll find is your life starts to change. Now, there was a book out a while back, called The Secret. And the day that that came out, the first month it came out, another client of mine writes me and sent me a copy of it, sent me a digital copy, and says, "Oh, by the way, okay, here you go. By the way, little interesting complication." Okay, she goes, "You've been telling me this for over a decade." Okay, one of the biggest things I found absolutely applies to life and to changing the way yours is going is you take a look at the way your world is, and instead of asking for help, okay, instead of asking for your God, your creator, your whatever, okay, instead of asking for it, thank them for having already done it. Now, in my case, okay, I used to have a massive problem with memory, with remembering people's names. But here's the real kicker to it. Every time I turned around, I'd go, I've got a great memory for names, but it's about that long. Now, the neat part is the moment I started telling myself that my memory for names was getting stronger, all of a sudden, lo and behold, it started to get stronger, and I started to remember names more readily. Sometimes at really random intervals, but the reality behind it was I started actually remembering names properly and remembering where I met them. Okay, now you got to remember when you're dealing with people, regardless of who you are, okay, regardless of how much money you've got, people do not, the most powerful word in anybody's language does seem to be their own name. Okay, picture the difference you get if you're dealing with a waitress or a waiter and you call them sir, ma'am, whatever, in a polite fashion. Take a look at the difference between that and calling them by name. Okay, it has two effects. One, it will have a beneficial impact on the way they react. But the other thing is it will also help you remember their name as well. And by the way, if you remember their name, they're going to be encouraged to remember yours. Now, the neat part about all of this is I'm looking at all this going on, and this character, as you can see, okay, is no longer just white. Okay, but this is the character I just brought into the storyline. And no, honestly, I'm talking about remembering names. I really don't remember this individual person's name. So far, he has just been listed as a vagabond, as an apparent vagabond. And the reason for that is because of the fact he only just entered and they haven't pieced together who he is. So what I'm looking at here is just giving him an appearance so that when I'm writing, I've got something physical I can look at and go, there's my reminder for myself. Now, here's the thing. Okay. I take a look at these figures. And the reason I say it's important to get something focused in your own head, okay, and focus on the positive side of it, is we turn around and if I take a look at, where is my file? Yeah, of course, the computer's not going to cooperate. Open that up, and then we go up here. We open the file that we actually require and grab the compendium. Now, when I open the compendium up, bear in mind, I've got 12 books on the go right now in the compendium that I'm writing. Now, if I go all the way up to the top here, not there, we go, the first people. First, so we take 23 off the top, we go all the way to the bottom, drag it all the way down. We're going to take 23 off of this particular, 23, so we have 387 characters already written into the story. Okay, but if you don't have a focus on what you're aiming at doing, you're not going to make much headway in all likelihood. Okay, again, you take a look at the table at the area behind me. Okay, in order to make it work properly, you have to have things sitting where they belong. I'm still very much a dinosaur here. Okay, but it works like an absolute charm. That's a standard old-fashioned desktop calendar. But keeping that handy lets me stay focused on the whole idea of what I'm aiming at. This shelf, this one, and the one on the bottom, and these two bottom shelves. So the bottom 5 shelves here are all inventory. Okay, so I can just look at them, and that's all they've got on those shelves. Okay, is just the books that I've already written, and of course my copy of the ones right here. Okay, now here's another neat little thing. When I said everything is connected, and I said you've got to stay focused. If I take a look at this shelf right here, these books right here are all actually books that's not all of them, of the ones I require, but they are all books that are on Casey's bookshelf in Casey's office in the Yldrbacian Chronicles. Okay, for me now, that's only one part of what I'm working with. Okay, because on top of that, I've got this other neat little file. So I've got the Chronicles are one aspect. Okay, but I'm doing exactly the same thing with my actual life. Okay. And what I mean by that, and again, I'm a dinosaur, absolutely. But this is why nobody can hack my database. Okay. When you talk about the modern world, you talk about passwords and everything. Okay, and no, I'm not about to show you my passwords. Okay, but all of my passwords are in this book. Now, picture, if you will, taking a computer to try and hack that. Okay, all they are is I take an old-fashioned card file, whatever you want to call it, and you can tell I've written a lot on that one, and I write it that way. So when I forget something, a power outage won't do a thing to me. Okay, I've still got all of my passwords handy, and all I have to do is go over and re-enter them. But I don't have to try and figure out what they were. Okay, that is the critical factor. Now, one of the biggest things, and I'm going to take a break for just half a second. I'll be right back because I just heard something I got to look at. Did you just knock on my door, or did I just hear something? Okay. Yes, my life still does things. When you take a look at the way your life is going, are you content with the way it is? Okay. And the reality is, most people forget that, most of you have forgotten you are in control of whether you are successful. But the key to being successful is to figure out what that means to you. Okay. For me, it's simple. Okay, get my office working. That's one aspect that I've got to get sorted around, which is why I keep getting up to do things. Okay, I've been told I should sit still, but here's the reality. Okay, and I mentioned this the other day, and somebody that was in and that was listening live made the comment that it forces you to actually think, to actually pay attention to what's being said. Now, I'm not about to start doing what I've seen some people do and go, oh, here's an exercise routine for you. Or, hey, how about let's turn on a video and I'll show you that I can play a video game. Okay. I mean, to me, that would be and that's almost as much fun as somebody turning on a TV and filming themselves watching a show. Okay. To me, this just doesn't add up very well. Now, of course, I look at what I'm doing and I know I'm somewhat scattered in a lot of ways. Okay. I really do. And I've been told, I've tried different times. I've tried first thing in the morning as far as coming online live. Okay. I've tried giving people warnings I was coming on live. Okay. I have no idea what the real key is that many people have. I've been doing this since March 6th of 2021. Okay. Most of the time I've been on at least once a day. But what I found is that I'm doing this, or I had to come to the understanding I'm doing these videos more to help keep myself focused and keep things moving in the right direction than I am for getting anybody else focused. Okay. If my talking about the hindrances I've gone through and the hiccups I've had, if my talking about them helps somebody get a little more focused or help somebody get motivated to change their own life for what they consider the better, then that has had to become a bonus to me. Okay, I am not by any functional stretch the best person on the planet. Okay, I'd love to say I am, and I can't. Listen, this is how hard it is. I am the best individual on the planet. Now, I could probably put a little bit more emphasis into that. I could learn to say things a little bit more emphatically or with a little bit more flair. But realistically, what you see is what you get. Okay. This is simply put the way I am. And I came to the conclusion that before you were going to be happy with that, I was going to have to be happy with it. For you to be content with for other people to be really happy with your life, first rule of thumb, you got to be happy with it. You've got to take the initiative and go, okay, I'm doing this for me. You may not be perfect. You may make mistakes. As a matter of fact, I'll virtually guarantee you will make mistakes. But you've got to start with the idea that you're making the changes for you. Okay. When I had my heart attack, I was told, I was hooped. I was going to be on blood pressure medication for the rest of my life. I was going to be on blood thinners and everything. I'll tell you, I'm not. Now, some people would say this is a bad idea. I should pay attention. By the way, this is one of the reasons why I find it easier. What you just witnessed there is one of the reasons why I find it easier when I'm on, as I will be again, on the first Friday of every month, from 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'm on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. And there, I've always held it's easier for me to simply have questions asked and answer those than it is to try and figure out what to say or how to go about saying it. And the intriguing part of that is the more I pay attention to it, the more I realize that dead air is not a good thing on any radio, and I've heard a lot of people leave it. But at the same time, because when I'm talking, if I don't have people that have asked questions, what ends up happening is I will let my mouth go wherever my mind does, which, by the way, is really varied. So I'm going to go a little sideways here. As you can see, I've made a little bit of headway. Okay. But I'm going to introduce you to a couple of people. Now, to me, these are very important people because they are the backbone of the Yldrbacian Chronicles. But the easiest way to look at it is we have this gentleman here. Okay. Now, this is the birth of the wolf pack. This is the first one of the stories I've got in print. But the primary person is this one, Jeremiah Wollstrand. Okay. He is a survivor. He is ex-military. He spent 2 years in the military defending his country and working with them. He served only 2 years and said, nope, I cannot deal with the decisions that are being made. So he turned around and got honorably discharged. He said, I've had enough in the military. I'm going forth. But he also made the decision that he was not going to be part of the problem. So he turned around and became an individual. As it said right at the beginning of it, Jeremiah Wollstrand became a survivor extraordinaire. He will try and talk his way out of almost everything. Pretty much. If he can figure out how to talk his way out of it, he will. Okay. However, if he gets pushed into a real problem, if he gets backed into a corner, like some of you, he will come out swinging. Okay. Now this gentleman here, this is Jeremiah, and that katana is a very special blade. Okay, it's a very special one that dates back from way back. He's got a very different, very long drawn out history. Okay, but as he puts it, I've been known by many names on many planets, and in his case, he really has. Okay, so he's got a major history. Then we have this gentleman here. Okay, built by another person. It's based on a character built by another gamer. This is Wilhelm Schunter. Okay, now as you can see, he is very well dressed. Okay, and he's got a heavy duty rifle. Okay, now this gentleman, somewhere along the line, it does tell you in the stories how these two actually met. He was a professional assassin. Okay, in other words, he went around. And as I'm sure you're aware what an assassin is, Wilhelm used to travel around and he would kill people for other people's money. Okay, somebody go, I want to hire you to take this guy out. His claim to fame, 1 shot, 1 kill. Okay, the guy does not waste bullets. Okay, these two became very good friends. Okay, and when you meet them, you'll understand why. Okay. But Wilhelm here has a lot of this idea that if he's got to get into a fight, it's not going to be a head on. He'll go for cover. Jeremiah will walk straight into the middle of it, but he will do his best to stay out of it to start with. Okay, then we have this young lass. This is Tanya Jan Scott. Okay, now Tanya is basically a hillbilly. She's a wonderful lady, but she's got a temper. Okay. And she does not take any, she doesn't take any flack from anybody, which you'll come to understand. Very combat competent. But when she first meets Jeremiah, these two end up in a hand-to-hand fight, a very detailed hand-to-hand fight. And I should probably bend that down just a little here. So pardon the modification, but it'll be easier for you to see. Okay, and this again is what I'm referring to when I talk about being focused. In order to get a 12-volume book together that's interlocked, okay, you have to realize these people are all interacting all the time. Okay, now, that's 3. There's 7 in the wolf pack, which is a group of people that Jeremiah has gone to put together. Okay, now, when you take a look at these two, now these are only 2 out of 12. Okay, but you'll see when I put the 2 books together, the pictures match up. So I'm going to put this one aside and introduce you to these 2 people. Okay, here we have Dirk Waterstone, ex-Special Forces. Okay, he is ex-Special Forces. Obviously, if you're Special Forces, military, but he was born essentially with a silver spoon in his hand. Okay, comes from a lot of old money. This is Blade. Okay, now Blade grew up essentially on the street, comes from a broken home, okay, and grew up on the street. But, in spite of that, these two become absolutely tight. They become absolutely rock-solid good friends, okay, early on in their lives. So when they come back together, we're dealing with a couple of people that have known each other for a very long time. The question with Blade is never, is there going to be a fight? The question with Blade is, when is it going to start? Okay, there's one point where somebody asks him, because he goes off at one point in the story, and do not ask me to quote pages. Even now, I cannot tell you what pages things take place in, even though I'm the one writing the story. Okay, but he's asked at one point, where did you run off to? Everybody's going to do things, and they go, Blade, what are you doing? I'm going to go see if there's some raiders that I can beat on. Now, bear in mind, the River Raiders are a negative group. They're a group of people that after the war, after the world collapses, these River Raiders are a group of mixed people that simply kidnap other people to sell them into slavery. Blade doesn't handle slavery well. So, of course, he goes, I'm going to go see if I can beat on it, if I can find a couple of River Raiders to beat on. And the net result is that they turn around, and, the party says, well, why? And he goes, well, somebody has to do it. That would be Blade in a nutshell. Always stepping in where it's necessary, if you will. Okay, now the same thing, oddly enough, applies to the way your life goes. Okay, you have to pick what matters to you. You've got to pick what is important to you, not what other people see as being important. Okay, it's an issue of you looking at it and going, are you content with the way your life is heading? If the answer is yes, this is a great thing. If the answer is no, then it's time to really look in the mirror and go, what's missing? Okay. Now, what is that sheet I've got? Oh, yes. This little sheet here, and I've shown it to you multiple times. Okay. This little sheet here is the idea behind getting your finances to work right. Okay, this is the real world part. Okay, and like I said, everything connects. Everything is connected. Okay, this point here. Okay, we have legally acquired a minimum of $3,800 by September 30th, 2022. Okay, that is the target I'm aiming at. Now, do understand, I only require 3,000 to run my entire household, my entire business. That's all I require. But I'm aiming for higher than that. Okay. But you have to decide, are you going to listen to other people that tell you you cannot do this? Or are you going to listen to yourself going, this is what I desire to do, and then move everything out of the way that is blocking that from happening? Okay. I will tell you, I've gone through it. Okay. Like I've taken a look at the whole thing. At least I think I have. And gone, how do I get started? Where do I get things moving? Well, the first place is right here. You have to get that heartfelt drive. For me, it boils down to this. I had to realize that number one, no matter how much money somebody else has, no matter how many outlets or how many books they've got published or in print, or how many books they've sold, am I any worse than the next person? No. The only difference between myself and some of these major authors that are out there, okay, is they've had better marketing and they've been around for longer. Okay, I've been running my business for 15 years now and done just about nothing with it. Now, who am I going to blame for that? Am I going to blame you? Am I going to blame the major media companies for me not getting off my tail feathers and making things happen? Does it make any practical sense at all? Okay, I took a look at decisions I've made in the past and went, some of these decisions were absolutely stupid in my eyes, never mind in yours. Okay, but I had to come to the realization that the only way I was changing that was if I made the decision that I was going to change it. That's the only way it works. Okay, now I played around with the half hour runs. I played around with the 2 hour runs. And I will tell you, being on live video, trying to find new things to talk about with virtually no, I get input from some of you, absolutely. Okay. But realistically, I get more interaction when I talk about races that are not on this planet, that are on the planet, but are not part of mainstream society. Okay. Than I do when I talk to people about things that are going on in the world. And I don't mean, let's see who got, who murdered. Let's see what war is going on. Is it a just war? Okay. Is the problem with the transit companies, is this justifiable? Okay. Now, I could talk about these things. I absolutely could. Because the Lord knows there's a lot of people out there that do. But I came to an interesting conclusion. Okay. And that is, if I look at all the things going on that are going wrong in the world, if I focus off world, and I am focusing off world in certain areas. Okay. This one being one of them. This book contains 69 races that I've personally dealt with. Okay, now this is simply a reference manual, but I'm in the process of getting the pictures done for it. Okay. So, with that in mind, but it's funny. I take a look at that now. People on the whole keep asking me, well, when is this going to happen? When is the world going to get sorted out? When is somebody going to step in and straighten it out? Newsflash, real bad, really poorly accepted reality part is God isn't coming down to straighten this mess out. Okay. Whatever you call your creator, God, Allah, Buddha, I don't care. Okay. Call it by any name you choose. They're not coming down to straighten out your world. You were given free choice. You were given free will. It's up to you to clean up your own mess. And this does not mean that you have to go out and shoot somebody. As a matter of fact, I recommend against it. There are only two viable reasons to ever kill anybody: self-defense or for food, preferably in not eating whoever is getting killed. But that's just personal choice. But the reality of it is this: you have a decision to make. What are you doing to help guide your world into a better world? Okay, what are you taking responsibility for? Something just dawned on me with this. Talk about slow learner. Now, here's an interesting drink. Okay, and I can show you this one. It's not downgrading anything. But I'm just going to give you an idea here. Okay, this, as you can see, it's store-bought. I didn't make it. But when you look at the ingredients on it, it says 34 grams of sugar, okay, is contained within this. Now, with that in mind, they also have 12% of the carbohydrates you require. Can't read that like that. It says 12% of the carbohydrates are contained in this same bottle. Okay. Now, with that in mind, that's one heck of a lot of sugar being popped into my system by drinking just one of these. And I don't drink a lot of these. Usually I drink straight coffee. I just didn't make any coffee today. I did go and have coffee today. I just didn't make it. Now, that's an awful lot of sugar to put in your system for your body to actually work with. So I deal with that, but here's the counterpoint to that. I can't sew. Like I said, I'm not what you would call a health food fanatic, because I drink something like that, and then I'll turn around and eat this. Now, I'm sure you recognize this. Okay. But when you look at the ingredients on this, again, you're running into an interesting problem. Now, the nice part about this is this has 0 sugar. Okay, but at the same time, whatever they've got in it contains enough salt in it that it actually helps keep my system stable. Now, this is not a talk about health food. Okay, these are not qualified as health foods, and most of what people talk about being health foods, frankly, aren't. There's a lot more going on. But you have to look at it and go, is what you're eating helping you feel better, or is it actually contributing to your being more lethargic and less productive in your eyes? Never mind anybody else's. Okay. And again, take a look at your life and ask yourself, is what I'm doing, is everything that's going on around me contributing to what I consider personal success? If the answer is yes, then carry on doing it. If the answer is no, it's time to modify what you're doing. Okay, it's time to really take a look at the world and see which way you're going. Okay, see what you can do to modify the direction. Because what I've done here, in my world, in my office, it's getting into better shape all the time. That bookshelf up here, clock, yeah, the bookshelf that you see where the clock is. Well, there. That has a whole pile of hard copy writing that I've done, that I've got to go back through and make sure that I get it into the books. Because what happens is I take a pile of paper with me, and just for example, I go over here, and just this one file, where are we here? What is this? Okay, this one file, okay, I go into it, and all I do is open it up here. And all it is, like I said, is loose leaf paper that's stapled together in certain parts. Okay, this little piece here is the handwritten version of the introduction of another character in the book. Okay, So I wrote a short little story that I've got to go around and make sure I put where it belongs. Sadly, I am not as good at filing as I should be. Net result, some of this information will never get into the books. Okay. Now, on the one hand, I've done that. But here's the flip side to that. Because at the same time, in the real world, we have a filing cabinet. And in this filing cabinet, I can go back here to this little file here. And you'll notice, that's fantasy. That's science fiction, science fantasy writing. This, right here, this is reality at its finest. Okay, I don't have it all set up on computer. Because if I set it all up on computer, it gets confused. Greetings, Ange. How you doing? Glad you can make it. You know, I have here in this file, as you can see, it says, I don't know if you can read that, but it says, what is it? Utility, Fortis, 2022. This is my power bills. Now, I still, and some people will say, well, why are you getting hard copy? Well, I get hard copy because it helps keep me on top of things. Okay. But I file it away in a physical file so that I can actually turn around and know exactly where it is. I can walk over here. In the real world, I can walk over to this file and go, this is what I require. Okay. I can walk over here, and I've got hard copy all the way down this entire file, all the way down this entire shelf that says, here's the information on this 12 volume saga that I'm writing. Okay, you'll notice the pattern is the same. Okay, now here's the other thing. Again, computers are a great thing. I'm working on a laptop. Okay. But I got to the understanding that the laptop wasn't reliable for me. Every time I had a power failure, something got screwed up. Okay. And pity help the world, if you think about it. In the last 70 years, more and more information is put on the computer and is not kept hard copy. Okay. Which means if you have a computer, if your computer has all this paperwork on it, all these records, and you have a computer failure, all of a sudden, all of that information is gone. Yeah, you've still got it up here. My suspicion is that your recall won't work well enough to pull it all back. Okay, so what I did was, like I showed you earlier, I've got one file here. This file contains information. Yeah, this one has, these again are card file. Okay. They cannot be hacked unless my place burns down. They will not get lost. Okay, but you can never hack them in a computer. Then I've got this. Okay. This is my marking file, and it is sadly out of date. Okay. But it was in here that I figured out how to track word-of-mouth advertising. Okay, where I can actually work with it. But again, it boils down to taking everything off the computer and having hard copy files. Takes up a little more room, absolutely. But if I have a power failure, I don't have a big problem. And, you know, I absolutely agree with you there, Ange. And if we take a look at what the governments are doing, what businesses are doing, so many people put it on the computer. Okay, now, with that in mind, what do I do with it? Don't know offhand. Still working on that side. You know, I nearly had a coronary the other day because this is still a very important factor. Okay, this, as you well know, is a cell phone. A lot of people use these for surfing the net in lieu of a computer. I use it for telephone calls and for texting, period. Okay, that's all I do with it. Because, well, that's not true. There are a couple of games I play. But as you can tell, I turn around and I've got a shelf here Okay. Like these are all zip drives. They're not full by any means, but they're ones I'm going to be filling. Okay. And again, they're just a smaller way of backing up. Now, of course, when we talk about when you take a look at the way I'm organizing my physical world and the world that I'm building for the Yldrbacian Chronicles, and I don't think I've got, or do I? No, it went the way of the dodo bird. No, it didn't. I'm not going to go looking for it. I've got a hand-drawn map of the way the original world in the Yldrbacian Chronicles was, but it has changed over the saga. It will shift all over the place. Bearing in mind, when you take a look at your life, okay, it starts a little before you're born. It actually starts while you're in utero, and the reason I can say that is because I remember my first trimester in utero. Yes, that sounds completely loopy. And some of you will go, that's not possible. This is just your imagination. And I would agree with you, except I managed to track down somebody from my childhood. Now, I didn't know them, but they were my mom's age. And I did confirm the memories that I had with them that took place while I was in utero. Before I was born, I had memories of certain things that had taken place. Okay, not the least of which was in 1963, which is when I was born, which would put 1962 when this took place. On a military base, there was a station-wide demand for people in the military, if they were in their first trimester, to go in and get an inoculation to handle an illness. Now, I don't know what the illness was. Okay, I don't recall that. But there was a demand across the base to, if you were in the first trimester, get in and get inoculated to avoid this illness. Okay, now I tracked down somebody about 20 years ago now, which would have put me just after being 30 years old, that happened to be on that same base. Okay, and for the life of me, I cannot remember the name, so let's not go there. Okay, but they confirmed that this request for an inoculation came in. Okay, and because of that, I looked at it and went, okay, so my memory of the first trimester, when I'm not actually, according to most people, alive, okay, I am still, in my opinion, at that point, I was still a cyst, meaning I relied 100% on my mother for oxygen and food, and water for that matter. All the nutrition had to come through her and did nothing back for her, really. The child that you're carrying, if you happen to be pregnant, congratulations. At least I hope it's congratulations. Okay. But at that point, I still have memories. I remember the whole 9 yards. And what happens with your life is you're born with a certain set of talents, a certain set of skills, a certain set of propensities. These are what you come in with. This does not mean this is what you are. Okay. You are whatever gender you're born. Whether you relate to it or not, doesn't matter. You're still physically that gender. Okay. I mean, I know of one guy that actually, what he related to was he worshipped a light bulb. Okay. His source of light was a light bulb. And every day he sat and he prayed to the light bulb. Now, did the parents take him to get help? Yes. Did it do any good or did it have any viable effect? It kept him stable. Just like when I went to talk to a psychiatrist. It helped me focus on me so I could find a way to cope with this world. Okay. Well, this kid prayed to this light bulb every day. Okay. His parents have been absolutely brilliant at once a week changing the light bulb. They've never failed. Until once. The kid got to be about 16, 17 years old. Okay. And he was sitting there in the closet. He was praying to this light bulb, and the light bulb burnt out. The kid's mind snapped. Okay. He absolutely snapped. And he ended up being institutionalized because he couldn't function. He couldn't even feed himself anymore. Now, does this mean he had a problem? Certainly. But does it mean that the light bulb was the source of his problem? No. The source of his problem was right here in his own head. Okay, he had focused everything on that one aspect. And I caution you, when you're worshiping something, someone, it doesn't matter. Okay, whatever it is you relate to, absolutely, if it helps you feel better, work with it. But you've got to understand this doesn't change what you physically are. Okay, I sit here going, I've got a bad leg. Now, I can tell you, I don't relate to, I don't identify as somebody with a bad leg. So I'm going to treat it as though I don't have one. And I expect you to treat me as though I don't have a bad leg. Now, this is a recipe for disaster. Okay. Because if you are a given way, you've got to learn how to work with that within your limitations. And telling other people you don't identify to a certain thing, okay, or as a certain thing, doesn't change whether you are that certain thing. Okay. Take a look at the old Dr. Seuss book. Are You My Mother? Okay. The poor little duck had no clue who he was. Right. He gets out of the nest, he goes around, he starts talking to machines. Because he's got no way of relating to being a duck. Okay. So he didn't relate to being a duck. So he figured he was a backhoe. I think he talked to a cow, a tractor, a number of other things. I don't recall the story at this point, but then again, it's been over a quarter century since I read the book. Okay, but I'm sure some of you have read it. Okay, but the reality is, absolutely, you have to be true to you first. But understand that in order to make your world work, you've got to realize you are not the only one in the world, and the world does not owe its life to you. It does not have to change its way of doing things for you to be content. They have their world as well. Okay, they have their own outlook. And yes, some people have got this idea because they've got more money than other people that this makes them better. One of the things I did with the Yldrbacian Chronicles, with the Wolfpack, there were two people I didn't talk about. Oswald Theodore Chesterfield III, okay, was a character. Now, I had to change the name in this particular case to avoid a major problem, okay, that was potential down the road. But he is essentially a grandfather, okay, but he's a grandfather with a 460 Magnum, okay, a professionally modified 460 Magnum rifle cut down to a carbine length barrel. Now, those of you that know anything about military weapons know that's a real big gun. Now, if you don't recognize the name, here's another reference point for you. If you watched the movie Tremors from back in the 80s, starring Kevin Bacon and obviously other people. Okay. Oh, and what the heck was her name? Real famous country star. Okay. But there was a scene there in the basement where there is a massive rifle in behind a glass jar, in a glass shed container. That rifle with a huge barrel, that is a 460 Magnum. Now, Oswald, as he's known as Ozzy, took that barrel and took a barrel from one of those guns and cut it down to half the length. Okay. And turned it into a much more viable weapon. Okay. Not with its greater range, but certainly with the punch. So he is your grandfather. He's the guy. At one point, they're going through rubble, and he comes across a real damaged, a real dirty stuffed teddy bear. So what does this man do in the middle of a firefight or right at the end of a firefight? I honestly don't recall which. I'll have to double check. But what does he do? He grabs this bear and picks it up and pops it into his backpack. Later on, he finds an orphan, a young child. And even after the world has collapsed, Ozzy turns around and turns this teddy bear over to this young orphan. Okay. Now, that is the grandfather. Okay. I mean, the man's 66 when I start writing the book. Okay. So you can tell things are different there. And then you have the 7th member of the wolf pack, who is Mickey Finn. Okay, and again, every one of these main characters was built by, and is based on characters built by another gamer. Okay, and Mickey Finn is simply one of these people that it's a question whether he actually realizes whether there's a war, because he's always got something happy to say. He's always goofing off. Okay, even when they're heading out on a run into the ruins on a salvage run, he's the one trying to get airtime with his dune buggy. Okay. In the middle of the fight, he is the one that is always looking at a way of making things a little bit more enjoyable, even though you're in a life and death situation. Kind of a major dichotomy, okay, when you think about it. And so all 7 of these characters, okay, are characters that have, they've got their own personalities. They were all designed by somebody else. The original was designed by somebody else. I have simply taken them and adapted the ideas to a new set of, to the story. Okay, now this is a group of 7 very diverse people that have come together after the world has collapsed and gone, let's work together and see what we can do about making this a better place. For virtually everybody. I'm asking you to do the same thing. Join with me now to help make this happen. Okay, not to make it better for one person, not to make it better for only the so-called elite. I don't personally believe in the so-called elite. Okay, yes, there are people out there that have a lot more money than I do. Okay, but we are being taught in today's world, nobody loses. Everybody owes their life to somebody above them. I have a problem with that. Okay, I mean, for in all fairness, I take a look at the people that have made major successful contributions. Okay, and yes, you can find bad things about everybody. I'm sure there are people out there that look at me when I come online, going, "This man is completely off his nut," and I question it myself. But here's the neat part about it. Every psychologist, every psychiatrist, every student of those two professions that I've ever asked have come up with the same answer. I've asked every one of them, I think, how do you tell if you're losing your mind? Okay. How do you know if you're actually losing your mind? And the answer has always been the same. If you're questioning, are you losing your mind? You're not. Because if you were losing your mind, you wouldn't know it. Okay. Now I'm constantly questioning that because I'm looking at this going, I know my imagination is hyperactive. I know when you take a look at the way I write, okay, when you look at the graphic stories, okay, I'm just looking here. I'm working on book 12 here, so let's see what happens if I pull this up. That is not what I wanted, so we're going to move that out of the way. Move that up so I can get down here and find book 12. Where is book 12? That's book 10. Where, pray tell, is book 12? 8, 6. Yeah, I've got all 12 of them here, but unfortunately they don't stay where I want them. And of course, now I'm going to have a heck of a time trying to find them. Wouldn't that be normal? I think I'm too far away. So pardon my leaning forward here, but 11, 2, 3, book 1. Yeah, okay. So I'm going to have a lot of trouble finding it, apparently. Well, that is unfortunate. So let's see if it shows up easier this way. Okay, if we open that up, we go to here. And we open the file up. I'll be working on this a little later tonight. But if I take a look in this particular area here, now 12 is what I'm working on right now. Okay. And I'm just looking at, I know who I want to show you. This is a character that is just, from my standpoint, I have no idea where this guy came from. I was writing along, and as any of you that write, as any of you have found, if you're writing, sometimes a story writes itself. So I'm just looking for one character that accidentally showed up. Okay. And why would that do that? Uh-oh. Okay. Okay. Here's a scene. Now we have, this is actually in book 12, in the Return to Paradise. This is the book I'm working on bringing out either at Christmas or as it's turning out, it may be early spring. Okay. Because I'm not as far along as I would hoped I would be. Things just didn't work out quite that way. But you got to understand, this particular scene takes place after Casey's, which is the primary bar in this, and that this whole saga revolves around at this point. Okay, it's already gone through an attack, and is currently going through an attack. And we have this little individual. Okay. As people raced them in multiple directions, carrying children and gear to whatever shelter they could find, Sawgrass wandered about, seemingly aimlessly, muttering to himself, "Silly humans leave such a mess, always in a hurry." As he casually stopped at a tent belonging to Casey's Crop, which is the security group in Casey's. Okay. And almost absentmindedly picked a high security lock on a case of fragmentation grenades, setting his backpack on the ground beside him in the process. "Sawgrass, what are you doing with the grenades?" Colin of Casey's Crop asked curiously. "Careless humans leave pretty eggs sitting around. Put them in safe place now. Yes, I will," Sawgrass happily exclaimed as he tucked 2 more grenades into his already bulging satchel and wandered off in the direction of all the noise and fighting, whilst leaving the pack behind, apparently forgotten. This is a character that is, well, in case you hadn't noticed, doesn't pay much attention. Of course, "Sawgrass, you forgot your backpack," a rather perplexed Colin called after the happily chortling Sawgrass. Trundling merrily along his way, Sawgrass overheard a small group huddled at the campsite talking. Now, we have in the background, we've got this fight going on. We've got people trying to stay focused because not everybody in this world is a combatant. Sawgrass really isn't. The chapter that he shows up in, right? You do actually meet him earlier, but this particular chapter, okay. Well, this is when the attack takes place. But this is, you got to understand, Sawgrass is only just shy of 2 feet tall. Okay. Absolutely no fear, no concern at all in the world. And he just wanders about doing his own thing. But you'll find with this particular character, and I don't even know how he came into existence, Much like there are people in your life that you may not know how you came to connect with them because they just don't fit into your normal purview. But I came to the conclusion with these stories that I am going to turn around. Okay, I will get them all out. Whether or not they make any money is no longer a major concern. Do I desire this story to get completed? Absolutely. But I'm looking at a good 10-year run. Okay, to get all of these out. There are 12 in this particular saga, and at least 3 other books that I know of that are tied to it. Well, technically 5. Okay, if we take this one, right, Races of the Worlds. Okay, if we take that book, okay, because this is a reference manual of the various races. And many of the races that you deal with in here, in the Yldrbacian Chronicles, these are detailed in this book. Okay. So you've got those two. Then I've got Jeremiah's journal, which all it encompasses is the journal entries that Jeremiah makes throughout the stories. Okay, and different observations that aren't actually printed in the actual chronicles. There's a lot more information coming in that I'm going to be adding to that as I go along. But of course, Jeremiah's journal will come out after the Great Collapse, which is the last book that will be written. Okay, after it comes out, then I'll be able to actually publish Jeremiah's journal. And then we've got the compendium, which covers all of the different people. And like I said earlier, okay, where are we? There we are. Would you mind not doing that? Okay. We take 23, so we've got 387 characters so far that I've identified. Okay. The compendium will contain all of them. Okay. And then I've got one story that I've written a lot of it. Okay. That is based on Jeremiah's time. And it'll just be, I believe, a short story, although I may end up including it in one of the books itself. Okay, but there is a storyline that takes Jeremiah off of the planet and onto a space station. Okay, and this is just one of those things that, like I said, it's all inclusive. Now, when you take a look at that, take a look at your world. Okay, in my world, I've got my work, as in the actual job I have, and the things that happen there. I've got my own home life and the things that take place there, which does, by the way, include gaming, as in playing Dungeons and Dragons, that sort of thing. Okay, but all of these are bits and pieces that are all intertwined. Everything you have gone through, okay, you've gone through some terrible things. Some of you have gone through horrendous periods of your life. I'm fortunate. I've never even managed to get myself a speeding ticket. This does not mean that I'm better than anybody. Maybe I'm luckier than some. Okay. But I've never had even that much of a problem. I managed to go bankrupt twice. Very creative, I thought. Not a good idea. There are things I'm not about to talk about. The one thing I will tell you, okay, is a secret is only as sound, is only a secret if the only person knowing it is you. The moment you share it with anybody, it's no longer a secret. Okay. Now, do I have skeletons in my closet? Undoubtedly. Everybody does. But the reality is, you cannot undo that which you've already done. You cannot unsay that which you've already said. You cannot unthink or unknow or unsmell anything you've already experienced. You can absolutely forget about them. You can absolutely bury them so deeply that you don't remember them. This does not mean they won't affect you. Okay. And for those of you who are having problems with your relationships, understand, however you got to where you are, this is what has made you who you are. This is what has made your partner who they are. Okay. And since you cannot change it, all you learn to do is how to cope with it, how to manage it. Okay. And I encourage you wholeheartedly, come clean. Talk to your other half. Okay. Talk to the friend or the family member that you've had a falling out with. Because I will tell you from practical experience, I didn't straighten everything out with my parents before they passed away. And now it is beyond my reach to do so. Well, in practical terms, I'm a working medium, so it's actually not that hard for me. But I'm an abnormality, as in I don't operate on the same wavelength that most people do. This does not make me better. It doesn't make me worse. It simply makes me me. Okay. And, I am the only one I can blame for that. I can certainly point the finger, and you can point the finger at anybody around you, okay, and go, it's your fault I'm this way. I cannot begin to tell you how many alcoholics point at their partner going, you're the one making me drink. Okay. It's because of you that I'm beating the heck out of you. It is time to wake up and look in the mirror and go, does this make any practical sense? Okay. It is time to take responsibility for our own actions, for our own thoughts. Okay. When you do that, and when people on the whole do that, this is when the world starts to change for the better. Okay, yes, the people in government, the people in the major corporations are making stupid decisions in my eyes. And the reason I say stupid is they know better. Okay, obvious example. Here we have inflation out of hand in at least two countries that I'm aware of, being Canada and the US. Okay, and they're going, how do we stop inflation? Oh, well, we'll raise interest rates or we'll adjust interest rates because that will do it. Got news for you. Now, maybe I'm a little too simplistic. Okay, but to me, it's a pretty cut and dried idea. You desire inflation to quit, you freeze prices and you freeze wages. Inflation is over. You no longer have inflation at all. And I don't mean freeze it for the poor people. I don't mean freeze it for or take away from the rich people. I mean across the board, governments included. Okay, you freeze inflation and inflation stops. You freeze your prices, you no longer have inflation. It's just that simple. Now, like I said, maybe this is overly simplistic. Okay, maybe it's unrealistic. Could be. But if you take the axiom that thinking about doing something is as good or as bad as doing it, the religious community quite often will go, thinking about it is as bad as doing it. Well, I will tell you this. If that is the case, now, there is no way, if that is the case, I cannot even look at it from a standpoint of rape. I've never even considered it with somebody. Okay. Have I considered blowing up buildings with people in them? Have I considered tearing planets in half? Absolutely. But, Earth is still here. So I'm guessing it didn't work out quite the way that I imagined it. Okay. But the reality is you have to take a look in the mirror and go, am I content? Is this working for me? If the answer is no, it is time to shift gears. It's time to start modifying the way you're doing things and what you're focusing on in order to make it happen. Now, this applies to the real world. It applies to your working world. It applies to your professional world. Doesn't matter. All of it is interconnected. Okay. And this is why it is so important to really focus on the things that you are content with in your life. Hold on to those. But when you take a look at the things you're not content with, modify the energy, modify the focus, so that you are no longer putting the effort into those negative things. Okay, very, very necessary. Now, this said, because I'm starting to get dizzy here, and I've been on here a lot longer than I was expecting, but hey, what the heck? We just hit the 140-minute mark. So we've been on here for 2 hours and 20 minutes. So with that in mind, I will be back. But until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive